to Tuesday Together Talk. I'm Reverend Rebecca Burrow. I am the founder and CEO of Building Reconciliation, Inclusion, Diversity, and Gender Equity. To our friends, our allies, and other champions of equity and inclusion, we are known as Bridge. I am excited for this evening. As you all know by now, on Tuesdays, we just come together with our guest conversationalists and we talk about all types of topics from human dignity to reconciliation, of course, to equity and inclusion, politics, voting. And tonight, we will go even a little further and we're going to dig into a very important conversation that I think we all should start talking about. So before I go in any further, I do want to say that tonight, as we talk about can the Me Too movement and WAP era coexist, I want to make sure that you all understand that we have four great panelists tonight and our technical assistants, Carrie Y. Hepburn Brown. But we can't cover everything about the Me Too movement and WAP era in one conversation. What you will hear tonight are the views and perspectives of our own. Um, each panelist will have their own perspective that they will share with you. Our goal for this evening is to just bring this conversation to the forefront. I know that a lot of people are having these conversations in their homes and in their, hanging out with their inner circle or what have you. But I think it's this conversation is worth having in a public setting. The other thing I need for you to know, my goal for this evening is that by the time we leave here tonight, that you will also begin to think about what your own perspective is regarding the Me Too movement and WAP era coexisting. That you can then go into your circles and be more informed and more objective about whatever your own personal views are. So I need for you all that are sitting out there in the audience, I want you to make sure that you ask your questions, give your comments. We want to hear your thoughts, and we will definitely get to those during our question and answering period. The other thing I need for you to know is, although this topic, we will keep it rated G as best we can. If you have younger children around or in the room, you might make sure that you use your parental discretion if you feel like the conversation is more than what your child needs to handle. So, like I said, we'll try not to use some of the terminology, but I have no idea at this point what my guests might say. So let that be your warning. So hello to everybody that's saying hello this evening. Carrie is running the comment section. So I do see a few comments coming in, and I think she see a few more. So hello to everyone. The other thing I need for you all to know is that the conversation may be become uncomfortable at some points. I don't know. That's not how we have it planned. But on Tuesday Together Talk, we believe in having an organic conversation. So if any time the conversation gets to be uncomfortable for you, please feel free to log off and check back in, maybe later when you can view it, when you feel that the time is appropriate for you. If you are leaving comments this evening, remember that we are streaming live on Facebook. Therefore, if you don't want the world to know a personal situation of your own, please don't share it in Facebook. You can send me a message and we can talk about it privately, but please don't share it if you feel that, this is something that you're not ready for the world to know. All right, so I got all the disclaimers out of the way, right? And we're going to begin this conversation in just a minute. But before we do, I need to introduce our technical assistant, Caroline Hepburn Brown. She's my sidekick. And Carrie is the founder and CEO of Onyx Strategic Consulting, where she is also part of this equity and inclusion movement. And she is doing a great work in the Tampa Bay area, helping to shape organizations and helping them to increase their equity and inclusion in their policies and in their trainings and in their understanding, but also in the communities as well. So, Carrie, it's on you.
Good evening. Thank you so much. I am excited to be a part of this discussion and conversation, and I think we've got some news at the end, a preview of what's to come next week that we'll ask you to stay around so you can hear about it. Today, I'm really going to be serving in the background to introduce our panelists, and then I'm going to go off camera and let the magic happen. So let me just tell you who we have, and I'll be introducing each person based on the way they appear on the flyer. So if you saw the flyer, then you'll know which order I'm going in, and I'll ask you all to do some sort of reaction in your window when I mention your name. So first up, we have Dorothea Manley Davis. Dorothea is the executive director of ProjectSpeakLife.org, a cultural and arts empowerment program located in Paducah, Kentucky. She is a graduate of Roosevelt University in Chicago, Illinois, with a bachelor's degree in administrative studies. Dorothea is currently pursuing her Master of Public Administration, her Master of Public Administration degree at Grand Canyon University. As a budding life coach and purpose-driven counselor, she is an abounding survivor of childhood molestation and adult rape. She speaks to women and girls all over the country, admonishing them to heal and live past their pain. Her mantra for life is an African proverb that says, if you look at a man and see him for what he is, he becomes what you see. But if you look at a man and you see his potential, you see what he could be. Her pride and joy are her 3 children, grandchildren, and her life partner. Welcome, Dorothea. Next, we have Amanda Fisher. Amanda is an associate attorney at a California based law firm and a PhD candidate at the University of California, Irvine in criminology, law, and society. She is researching gendered stigma in the legal profession in the Southern United States. I know y'all want to hear more about that. Amanda is also a visiting assistant professor at WMU Cooley Law School in Tampa, Florida, where she teaches an upper level writing course and mentors students through academic and bar success. She also serves as the co-chair of the inclusion committee at the university, and is a proud mom of a 4-year-old. Welcome, Amanda. Next, we have Dr. Yolanda White. Yolanda is currently a school psychology intern at a local school district. She has been in education for 8 years, serving as both a teacher and now a psychologist. She has a bachelor's in science degree, a bachelor's of science in criminal justice from the University of Central Florida, a master's in forensic psychology from Agassiz University, and a doctorate of psychology in school psychology from Capella University. Yolanda's passion in life has always been helping today's generation reach their potential. She thrives on helping students be their best selves in academic and in mental and social and emotional aspects. She's been married to Reverend Marcus Derek White the first for 10 years. They have 2 wonderfully crazy boys, Micah Derek, who is 5, and Marcus Derek II, who is 3. Yolanda enjoys being with her family, watching Lifetime movies, and reading in her free time. Welcome, Yolanda. And then we also have as our final panelist, Jerry Lee Brown. Jerry has nearly 15 years of experience as a human service professional with a focus on youth. In her current role at a local Title I school, she motivates students to succeed and encourages them to demonstrate positive behaviors. In the rare instances when students make poor choices, she inspires them to get back on track and supports them through the process. She is CPI certified and has expertise in de-escalation, redirection, and conflict resolution. Jerry Lee attained her associate's degree from St. Petersburg College and is finishing up her bachelor's of science in interdisciplinary studies. In addition to her deep knowledge and involvement in youth development, Mrs. Brown worked in hospitality for 10 years, which provided an opportunity to maximize her customer service and project coordination skills. Jerry is a devoted wife and mother of 6-year-old girl-boy twins. She enjoys dancing, traveling, and visiting museums. That, ladies and gentlemen, is our panelist for the night.
All right, ladies, you ready? So you guys look so serious. So relax a little bit. We're still trying to get Dorothea's face on camera. So I am actually going to work behind the scenes. Well, Carrie's going to work behind the scenes to get Dorothea's face, and then I'm going to go ahead and start the questions. Um, what we'll do this evening, I'll give a little commentary and then I will ask the panelists to respond to the questions. So, because most of you know the Me Too movement, I'm not sure if everybody understand, or have heard of the WAP era. So, if you're out in the audience and you haven't heard of the WAP era, WAP, then I need for you to get your little Google machine out real quick and look up WAP lyrics, WAP lyrics, okay? Because I need for you to understand the context of this conversation this evening. And if you only understand the Me Too movement, you won't get the context of why we have decided to have this conversation. I cannot give you the WAP lyrics over this 6 o'clock hour because children are still up and about. But it leads me right into the commentary I want to give. It was not too long ago, maybe just a couple of weeks ago, that the Grammys happened, and Cardi B and Meg the Stallion, performed their song WAP. I didn't know because I don't watch the Grammys or what have you. But what I did notice was that there was a lot of commentary on social media after the fact, where a lot of people were concerned that that particular song was performed while children was still awake, and on a program that should be family oriented. So what you probably picking up from what I'm saying is that the song is very sexual in nature, and it encourages women to express themselves sexually, and it talks a lot about their sexual parts. One of the quotes that I have from Meg the Stallion, she said it in an interview with Jared Alexander from the Griot back in December, and she said some people just don't know what to do when a woman is in control and taking ownership of her own body. I feel like for a long time, men felt like they owned sex. And now women are saying, hey, this is for me. I want pleasure. This is how I want it, or I don't want it. It freaks men the heck out. Now, why it's important for you to understand the context of the song is because the language is very explicit, and it talks about women being able to use the power of their P to to get what they need. So my first question to and Amanda, I'm gonna start with you. My first question for tonight is, since WAP is being called the epitome of female empowerment, because so many women now are feeling empowered, just as Meg Thee Stallion said in her interview, women are finding that power from being able to express themselves sexually. Do you believe that overt sexual expression should be considered a form of women's empowerment? Amanda, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Happy to be here. So in short, to answer your question directly, yes, I do. And we're going to get into this, so I'll try not to get ahead of myself. But I think that that quote that you mentioned is perfect, right? Because for so long, our bodies, women's bodies, have been a commodity for other people. They have been for other people to look at, for other people to use, for other people to, create life within us. And I think that we are seeing kind of a turning point with this WAP era and saying, my body is not your commodity. My body is my own. And I think that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And I also think you make some very valid points kind of about the context of this, right? You mentioned, well, this award show, there was children, there could have been children, it's supposed to be family oriented. And to me, I think that's a nuanced issue tangential to the main issue, which I think is very important. And some people maybe will judge this song and these lyrics because of they think they're crude or they think they're explicit, right? For me, and I'll say this now at the outset, I am female, but I am a white woman. And so I know that comes with privilege. And so from my position, I don't think it's up to me to judge how anyone else expresses their empowerment. And even if it's not the way I would do it, I think that they're expressing it. And I think it's a good thing. Would I let my 4-year-old listen to it? No, because it's an age thing, right? But am I teaching my 4-year-old, ways that I think will raise him to be part of a society that values women and women's empowerment and women's autonomy and agency? I think a lot of it has to do with agency. I would like to be in control of my life, right? And in a lot of ways, even those of us now, this generation, we haven't been in control of our lives. And I think sexuality is a large part of that. And it's been repressed in a lot of ways. And it's been something that's been used to oppress us as women. And I think we're finally starting to see how, we can kind of turn the tables in a sense.
Thank you, Amanda. I got some follow-up for you later, okay? Dorothea, I still can't see your beautiful face. Can you hear me? I think she's on mute, Carrie. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Jerry, and hopefully Dorothea and Carrie are working on the situation with technology behind the scene. Miss Jerry Lee. So, so same question that I asked Amanda. Do you believe overt sexual expression should be considered a form of women's empowerment?
My short answer, yes.
Now give me your long answer.
It goes in accordance with what Amanda said. Women are now, they're looking at themselves, and they're saying, hey, I've been here, I've earned this, and I'm going to show it to you. But we're not going to do all. So I can expand on that later. I will expand on that later because it's PG.
It is PG. Okay, so you say that your short answer is yes, that women should have the right to express themselves in an overt way. But is there any tension that you sense there? Because I know that you have a daughter and a son, and they're twins. And so you're raising these two little people that are coming up in this era.
Yes. And what I've tried to do, especially with my daughter, is I don't want people just to say, oh my God, she's so pretty. Yes, I know. And she knows, but there's beyond that. Because when you start saying that, then that's all they see. And then my son, he's not there yet. They're the same age, but he's not even close. I mean, they look at him and they say, oh my God, he's handsome. And I say the same thing. There's more than just what you see. So I do try to tell my daughter and my son that you're not just pretty. You're more than that. You're smart. you're intelligent, you know, the other things women need to empower themselves, not just, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. No.
I hear you. And what I believe you're saying is part of having that empowerment is to own and understand your sexuality, and for you to make that decision, of course, when they get old enough, but for you to, for you to have that, as Amanda said, having that agency of self to be able to say, this is how I have decided to live out my life. So, Yolanda, you got the question? I'll read it to you again, okay? Do you believe overt sexual expression should be considered a form of women's empowerment? And then Yolanda, as you are answering or responding to this question, I want you to respond with the video in mind and the performance in mind, okay?
So I agree with the two previous panelists. I think that women have been suppressed with having to, even with the abortion, like this is my own body. They want me to not abort, not do things with my own body, and this is my body. And I think women have gotten so upset that they've kind of veered to, okay, I'm going to do what I want sexually with my body, and no one can say anything about it. And I agree. I think women should do what they want with their bodies. And if it's sexual, if it's something else to be empowered, do I agree with all of it? No. I'm a woman that comes from a lot of, sexual trauma, so I see it differently. And so I don't think that sexual expression is the only form of empowerment. And I think putting that out there kind of makes people say, well, this is all that they're about. This is all that I see them as, is this sexual tool. And I remember back in the day that when, everybody would walk around and they go, oh, this is all they see me for. Well, when you have WAP error, that's what they're going to see you for. And if you have chosen that specific empowerment tool, that's what they're going to see you as. And they're not going to see anything else. They're not going to see that you can sing or that you can rap. They're going to see you for just that, this sexual person that they want to just be on top of all the time. So do I think that women should be able to do that? Yes. Do I agree with it? No.
Mm-hmm. Yolanda, did you just say that they want to be on top of all the time? Is that what you just said? Okay, I wanted to make sure I heard you. Okay, so I appreciate all of your perspectives, and please, folks, in the comments and chat, I want your perspective. So please make sure that you're sharing, whether you agree or disagree. That's not the issue. We just want you to share in the conversation. So Dorothea, I think she's ready now, and so we get a glimpse of her beautiful face.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So Dorothea, I'm not sure if you've heard everything that we've talked about, but I just start with this first question, which is, do you believe overt sexual expression should be considered a form of women's empowerment?
Yeah. Well, no is the short answer. Very short answer. Sorry for that. But I think that for me, I was pondering that question, and it was very profound, Rebecca, by the way, Reverend Rebecca. I think that it's so important that we deal with, like, I think the first things first kind of mentality is that what are we teaching our children? What are we teaching our young women? What are we presenting to them? And what do we want them to ultimately get out of what we are giving them? It's kind of like feeding a child cake all day, every day, all night, every night. and expecting them to maintain a good, healthy balance in terms of their health. That probably won't happen. Instead, we try to give them something balanced. We try to always follow we used to try to follow the 4 food groups. I don't know what it is. If you could see me, I'm not following the 4 food groups right now. But anyway, we'll blame it on COVID as with everything. But I think that we have to be very mindful of the balance that we create in the lives of our children and those who we are responsible for, particularly young women. I don't believe um, that our sexuality is a form of power in the sense that it helps us get what we want. I think that we can use it. We can use it, but I also think that we can abuse it. And so I'm not going to go any further into that as well, but I could talk all day about it, as you probably know. But I think it's so important that we strike a balance, that the first thing that we do is try to teach our kids character, good character, and how to be confident in who they are.
I appreciate all of your responses. Dorothea, you said something that made me think about how do we strike that balance. And the reason one of the reasons why I really wanted to have this conversation is I remember a time where women went to work as secretaries, and that's what they called them then. They weren't administrative assistants or any of that. They were called secretaries. They went into these large corporations and they worked for men with power. And typically what would happen, the women were going in, they were taught by their moms or whoever, grandparents, whomever, to go into these workplaces, and that's where you looked for your husband. Men were taught that this is where you could possibly either find your wife or your mistress, okay? And so that's what was happening in the workplace. And so women knew how to what type of clothes to wear and the demeanor to strike, because that was part of the social construct that we were living in at that time. Now, and if if you need any reference, go back and watch some episodes of Mad Men. Y'all remember that show? Just go back and watch some episodes, because that's real life in that, and it definitely fits the context of that time. So part of the challenge we have today is that we are trying to teach our young women, our young girls, how to break away from these gender defined roles. And yet we are grabbing them and pulling them back in and reminding them to use the power of their overt sexual expression to find that empowerment. And so this is where we're trying to figure out, how do these things coexist? How do we then find our voice from being victimized by the power, and then also find our voice to use our overt sexual expression as power? And I'm going to read you all something. Well, actually, I'm just going to share with you something. The other day, I found it so interesting that y'all remember Captain Kirk. William Shatner is his real name. Captain Kirk is from from the Star Trek in Boston Legal. Amanda, you probably, if you never watched, you need to watch. But one of the things that he mentioned, one of his struggles now was that he didn't understand that he was supposed to, that what he was doing back then when he was expressing himself and telling a woman she was gorgeous and flirting with a woman and stuff. He didn't know then that today that would not be acceptable because of the Me Too movement. And so on the one hand, women were expressing themselves at that point, or they may have, really preferred for him not to look at them and give attention to how their appearance was. But he felt like the Me Too movement has really changed the way he thinks about women and how he will now approach women. And he's 90 years old now, y'all. So, but he's still thinking about it. And so my next question is, oftentimes the behaviors of victims who have been sexually violated, or men have used their power over a woman, they have used their power. Oftentimes the victim or the person that is alleged victim, they are scrutinized and they are victim shamed, or they're blamed. So do the power of sexual expression clash with the definition of sexual violation? There's Dorothea, praise Jesus. Do the power of sexual expression clash with the definition of sexual violation? Dorothea, since we get to see your lovely face, I want to start that question with you. Take yourself off mute now.
I said you probably want me to go back to the pink
No,
screen,
no,
but
no, no.
so let me give you just a little bit of information here. Take the sticky thing off of your camera.
Oh,
Just gonna give you that. I know that's valuable information.
okay.
Okay, could you please say the question to me one more
Okay.
time?
So, do the power of sexual expression clash with the definition of sexual violation? So, if we are saying that, we that women can be overt, have, express themselves overtly in a sexual way, do that clash with the idea of sexual violation, where, especially as we think about the times we live in, where people often victim shame, or they say that a victim, uh, they may blame the victim because of something they were wearing, or something that, the way they were dressed or whatever,
Right.
when really they're just expressing themselves. So do those two things clash?
Hmm. I think that's a really great question as well. I think that they can clash for sure, in the sense that um, if a woman is dressed overtly, and yet she is giving a message of, hope, or a message of, I mean, just say if you were a pastor and you're, or a preacher, and you're preaching over the pulpit, and you've got, cleavage showing, you've got kind of a short skirt on, that's kind of up to the thigh high. Yes, no, Rebecca, we're not doing that. But but just say you're in that scenario, then that puts you at a disadvantage,
Mm,
because you are presenting two conflicting stories,
mm,
and the message that you want to be received is not being thoroughly received, because you're creating a distraction. Now, the reality is that men are attracted to women, and women are attracted to men. So when when you go to a place, the very first thing, if you go hear a speaker, the very first thing that you do is you size them up. You look at what they have on. You look at how their hair is did. You look at how, you look at all of the externals. That's the first thing that you see. And there's a message that is automatically given back to you regarding what you saw. Now, it's your perception. It doesn't mean that that person is this way or that way. It's your perception. It's where you came from. It's your experience that you draw from first. And then, and then after you start to listen to the person, well, if you can get past the distraction, whatever it may be, then you can begin to understand a little bit more intimately about who that person is. But if we want to keep it real, the first thing that you do is deal with what you see.
wow.
So, yeah.
Well, you just gave me a good question during our open discussion that I got for you. Um, just for the people that are watching, please know that we are monitoring the comment section, and Carrie will make sure that we respond to your questions during the Q&A. Um, Miss Jerry Lee, you got the question? Do the power of sexual expression clash with the definition of sexual violation?
Yes. Being an ex-Jehovah's Witness, we weren't allowed to express ourselves. Yeah, I'm gonna need that phone call after. We weren't allowed to, women mainly were not allowed to express themselves. And when I left, I thought that sex was how I should communicate as a woman. And then I realized that it was a violation of me and my body. So yes, it clashes.
I'm not going to push you on that because you gave so much of yourself, and I really appreciate that personal story that you shared. But it do give me a question to follow up with on a little later. Yolanda, so you've already said no, to the first question. You've made it pretty clear that you don't necessarily think overt sexual expression should be considered a form of women's empowerment, although it, you know, it can be, but there is a balance. So I'm just wondering, do the power of sexual expression clash with the definition of sexual violation?
It can clash. It can send a different message, but I don't believe that it gives anyone the right to violate you. Um, if a male or female, it can go both ways, sees you because you have on a short skirt, even if you had on a long skirt, they would see you the same. So I do think they clash to that person's perception. I don't think that it's saying come and violate me. I think that every woman has a right to wear what they desire, and if they use that as there are prostitution. They use clothes and those things to get that empowerment or whatever they need from the person that they want. But if they weren't a prostitute and they were just on the street, there is no, you should not be violating me at all. Even if you are a prostitute, that should not give anyone a right to say, because they're dressed this way, I'm going to go take that. So they can clash, it can send different messages, but being fully clothed can also send a different message. So
Wow, that's good. I really like the fact that, for your first response, you were like, there it could be an issue. But at the same point, if someone is expressing themselves sexually, then that does not give a person the right to violate. And Dorothea, you could probably relate to this. I remember when I first started preaching, my whole idea of wearing a robe, my my priestly garment was more of a for me a covering, because I felt that it would hide me from people, from some of the stares and some of the other things, the messages you get, yes, from the pews at times. And someone told me, they said, look, you can come in here in a potato sack. If someone is attracted to you, it's not going to matter what you have on. And so I'm wondering if that is a reality though for men. and maybe not even just men, because reality is that there are some women, some women go to the gym to look for men. Let's just be real. Y'all remember when Michael Jordan came out with that Fruit of the Looms commercial? And look, that might be before a couple of y'all's time, but there was some women that were very impressed. So, but that didn't give anybody the right to, I guess my perspective is that didn't give anybody the right still to violate him. So Amanda, we need you now to come on into this conversation and help us understand, do the power of sexual expression clash with the definition of sexual violation?
So I won't give you the typical lawyer answer, which is it depends, right? But I think it does. So I'll kind of go through how and why. I started out my first answer talking about agency and autonomy. And I think now this brings us around to consent. Sexual expression is, as I mentioned, I think that it can be a form of empowerment, but that does not equate with consent. And so sexual violation, I think that can happen, like you said, whether someone's in a potato sack or whether they're wearing, a short skirt, that can still happen because it's that layer of consent or non-consent that I think turns the tables. And of course, I'm thinking through kind of the evolution of some of our laws. And as Yolanda is equating this to prostitution, I'm thinking not only about the issues with women who are prostitutes being believed, not only in a court, if they even make it to the courtroom, right? If they're believed by law enforcement on the street to even take a report, if they're believed by the prosecutor to even push the charges forward. And then if they do make it to court, if they're believed by either a judge or a jury, and how that is such a struggle. But just because someone is a prostitute doesn't mean that there's open consent, right? And I also tie this back, work with me here, okay? I'm going to tie prostitution into marriage, right? Because I think, someone fact check me on this, I think it was not until the 1970s, which was not all that long ago, that if you were married, you couldn't be raped under the law. Let me make that clear. Under the law, you couldn't be raped if you were married by your spouse. And that to me is mind-blowing, right? Because there are plenty of times someone may want to say no to their partner, who, whether they're married, whether they're not, everyone should have the right to say no. And I think that is a concept that is foreign to our society in the US because of the fact that women have been repressed. And I know we'll get to this later, but we had a question about if it's all women or if it's cultural. I think it's both, because I think it is all women, but it's different. Like I said in the beginning, I know I have privilege. And Yolanda and I, we grew up together, right? So we have seen how society treats us differently. And we have navigated that and negotiated that from the time we were young girls in high school. And we had those experiences together in a lot of ways. And we got through those experiences together in a lot of ways. And I think that we're talking about appearance, and you mentioned your robe, and it made me immediately think of RBG, right? Because we know that RBG wore these beautiful, elaborate jabots over her robe. And that was her way of rebelling against a masculine requirement. She said, when I put this robe on, it's designed for men and it makes me look like the men, but I'm not a man, I'm a woman. So I'm going to wear this. I'm going to wear these necklaces to make everyone see that I am a woman. And I think that for me, this question is not about Should women be like men? I get this question a lot with my research. Okay, well, should women just be like men? No, because men should not be the default, right? We can be different and we can have different thoughts, but we should have the power and the autonomy to decide those things for ourselves.
Oh my, that's good. That's rich. I just love having this conversation with you all because you're giving me different perspectives, and you're reminding me of why this conversation is so important. That we bring it out of our silos and our inner circles, and we really start dealing with these questions, because Amanda, for you, I remember, when I first started preaching, Dorothea, you probably remember that I love my high heels. I mean, that's just me. And so walking into the pulpit, where and you all know that ministry is still a male dominant vocation, but I was the only woman in ministry where I was licensed, and I wore my 4-inch heels and higher if I decided to. And people, you're going to preach in those? For me, those were my power heels. Okay. Those were my power pumps. That's what I called them. They were my power pumps. They made me feel very feminine, and they reminded me that I was a woman in a male dominant profession. Now, for some of the brothers and some of the sisters, my power pumps were a turn on. I'm just being honest. Okay. Now, if we really want to deal with this question, for some people, they would suggest then that you shouldn't have worn them. You knew that you were entering into a male dominant vocation, and you were in front of all these people, so you should not have worn those heels. And so if a brother or someone said something to you that was out of place, then you own part of that. That's the conversation that we have to start dealing with and having, because as we continue down the path of with the Me Too movement, where more and more people are being accused or alleged perpetrators, and we have this conversation of where is the woman's responsibility or ownership, we got to start dealing with this and having this conversation. And so that's one of the many reasons I wanted you all here this evening to share in this discussion with me. The other piece, Carrie keeps sending me notes, y'all, and so I'm trying to read her notes. I want to move to this next question because to me, I think this is kind of sums up where we need to go and dig deeper into it for this evening. Power is at the core of victimizing or violating others. We know that power is that what drives it. And Darlene actually said something about it in her comments there. So if women are feeling empowered because of WAP, the power of the P, y'all, and y'all have to spell out the rest because my mama's on here and I ain't want to get in trouble. And I said, I did say that. But if women are using the power of their P, and if you look at the WAP lyrics, Cardi and Meg talk about getting their tuition paid. They know, they know how to work it to such a degree that you ain't even got to be near them or with them or ever been with them for you to be excited about them. Now, I want y'all to go and read the lyrics because I am giving you the rated G version. Okay. You have to know that the lyrics are very explicit, and it definitely talks about how powerful the P is, the power of the P. Jerry, I said it, okay? So if we know that power is at the core of victimizing or violating others, Is the power of the P the counterpart to male power, privilege, and patriarchy? So we got, on the one hand, men that can sit in the boardroom and function as a CEO and use their power to get what they want out of women. And now we got Meg and Cardi talking about the power of their P to get what they want out of men. So is the power of the P the counterpart to male power, privilege, and patriarchy? Jerry Lee, you get to go first.
Yes, it is. The power of the P is a very powerful thing. My wife is dying upstairs. I hear her. Men use it, but when our power of that is, I am nervous answering the question. Our power of the P is, it's how we walk into the room. That's my power of the P. It's how we own it. This is who we are. This is what I have. I'm not going to control you with it, but it's what you want. But I know how to use that without going with the WAP to get to that level that men use their power for. That's my power to P.
All right. Miss Dorothea, come on in here.
I am so glad you asked me to do this after Jerry, because Roma. I think what I loved that I felt some spoken word coming on. I thought, okay, she's ready to go into something really deep here. So maybe we can get some of that later, Jerry. Some of that spoken word you got down in there. But
I'm sorry, it'll come.
Okay, all right. I'm waiting on it. I heard it. I'm waiting on it. So I think the power of the P and men's power. Y'all, I'm old. Okay, let me just say I'm the oldest person in the room. Well, I don't know. We in there. We in there. But so I'm a little old school. Okay, let me apologize now. I'm a little old school. But I think that let me just back up and say this. I sure enough know how to use my feminine wiles when I want to. Okay, I know how to get what I want. If I wanted to, I could go out there and I could be Cardi B, the old version, and are you laughing, Yolanda? Okay, so anyway, but that's not what it's about, for me. The power is, as Jerry was so eloquently putting it, the power is to understand how my character, how my essence, how my love, how my strength can change the tone in a room. I've been gifted that way. I love that. I love being able to walk into a space and command attention. Now, it's my responsibility to manage that from my perspective. And as Yolanda was saying earlier, it's someone else's perspective to manage that from the way that men automatically want to come and conquer me. And that's not what this is about. And I have to train them in that moment. I have a very teachable opportunity to help them understand that this is not what that is. This is not about sexual attraction. This is about your power. Your power is actually attracted to my power. And my power is not just my P. My power is my intellect. My power is all the years that I have spent trying to train for a particular moment. My power is my self-discipline, my, those things. Those things are also my power. So when I think about being able to affect change and being able to help men understand what that is, I'm not going to start by showing them my P, as in, Jerry, we'll let you say it. As, but I will start by showing my power, by really helping them understand what that attraction really is. Because most of you women here look like you probably understand what your power is and how you can use that charisma that you have to do different things. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. It doesn't start with your sexuality. It starts with your humanity. That's my long answer.
Oh, that preacher, and I came on.
Oh,
Oh, that's good. Jerry has her finger up. You got something to say, Jerry?
And to Dorothea's point, being a gay woman, I can still walk into a room filled with men dressed androgynously and still dominate it
Mm-hmm.
because it's the power of the P.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's how we bring it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the power.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a gay woman, I'm like, I'm not interested, right? But I can get you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the power. And that's okay. I'm muting now.
Wow. Man, I should have asked this question first. This just got good. Okay. Yolanda, come on off of mute. Come on off of mute. You got the question, Yolanda. You need for me to restate it.
I think I got it.
Okay.
So the P is powerful. It is powerful and it can move mountains. So I agree that it is the male counterpart to how the male dominates in the workplace or in the pulpit or anything like that. I don't know if you've ever heard the saying of the male will say, I'm in control out in public, but the woman is in control at the house. And it's because of the P. It's because they have that power. But then you get into, what do we tell as we are raising children, what do we tell them is their empowerment? Do we tell them it's the P, or do we explain all the things that are encompasses us, our character and all those things? And so they have to figure that out on their own if they want to make that sexual, explicit, overt piece their empowerment, or if they want to explore other areas. But I think because we have not been able to talk about sexuality, we have not been able to express it, especially if you grew up in the church. Nope, you cannot be sexual. Okay. And they didn't teach how to be sexual even when you become married. How do you be that when you never talked about it in the beginning? So it has become so powerful now because it was unable to be described or talked about, or it was deemed as wrong or bad. And now I think the WAP era is a little bit of a rebellion. So they're saying, I'm going to use this. I found out that it's powerful. So I'm going to use it as a tool to get what I need, when I need it, what I want. I've watched a lot of Lifetime movies, guys. Like that's like my thing. And it teaches a lot of things. They have movies on there about young girls in prostitution, high school girls prostitution, getting what they want from older men by just the P. So are we saying to those young girls, yeah, go ahead, do what you got to do? You know how to use it, do it. Or are we saying there's more to this? There is you're more than that. When we're saying that, we also have to, try and tell them too, it's not that your sexuality is bad, but you don't want to use it in that way and be empowered by just this. Because in the long run, you're going to be confused when you're now at a position that you want more than just what the P can provide for you. So it gets old after a while, but it is powerful. And I agree that it is
Literally gets old after a
the
while.
male counterpart.
Thank you, Jerry, for that humor. Yolanda, you really just said something powerful. No pun intended. Listen, when you said that men say that they have the power in public, but women have it at home, it really is a good example for how we think about society in a sense, because there is still, we go back to those gender defined roles. Where do women have the most influence, and where they're supposed to have all this responsibility and nurture and take care of the kids and all that kind of stuff at home, right? And yet men are out, they're supposed to be out in public making the dollars and doing whatever they're supposed to do to provide for their families and all that stuff. And so we have this thing still set up the same way, that at home the woman has the power in the influence, and out in public men do. And so we're still living in those gender defined roles. The other thing I think that is important is that we have to also think about that accountability for men when we think about the women using their power and men using their power. We still, I think, have to make sure that at least I feel that we have to still hold folks responsible for how they use their power, and especially if they're using their power to violate other folks. So I'll give you an example. When I was a chaplain at Martin Flint Hospital, my supervisor used to say to me all the time, "You're using your power, you're using your power." And it took my one of the staff chaplains there to let me know, "Rebecca, what she is saying is that the spirit of God is on you, and that it is so powerful." And she didn't understand it, and so she took it as a negative. So that's how she perceived my power. Okay. On the other hand, we know that people can use their power to violate and to try to manipulate you into doing things, or try to use that power over you to make you succumb to whatever they're asking. And so I think that both of women and men have a responsibility to how they use their power and what they are using it for. Amanda, come on in here, talk to us, lawyer.
You all have so many great insights and comments, and I feel like we could talk about this literally for days. And I think in listening to all of you, I'm kind of picking out themes, because I don't know, that's what I've been doing lately, is picking out themes. And there's a power over ourselves and a power over others, right? And so I think it's important that we know we have power over ourselves, but we need to, when we're talking about what do we teach our kids, I think that exactly like Yolanda said, okay, yes, we need to recognize this. We need to not repress it or say this is a bad thing. We need to say, in the right context, this is a wonderful thing, right? And you should embrace it. Our womanhood is one part of who we are. And it's up to us to decide how we use it and whether we use it to try to gain power over other people. Although, to answer the question directly, I'm probably the only one. I'm going to say no, it is not the same for women and for men. Yes, it is powerful. Yes, it can be used to manipulate and to have power over others. Absolutely. But I don't think it's the same as the power that men have, because, and I know we're talking about gender, but obviously intersectionality is huge here. it's ingrained in the structures and in the institutions that our country is built on. The patriarchy is ingrained in it. And if it wasn't, if the power was equal, right, between men and women, we wouldn't have just elected our first woman of color to vice president. We would have had vice presidents and presidents and plenty of CEOs and managing partners, and we would all be up there in the same places if our power was the same. So I'm going to say it's not, because of the fact it's ingrained in our structure. And one of the most profound moments for me when I can't remember which class it was, one of my early classes in my PhD program, they said all of this early research, men were the default. So we don't actually know how any of these theories apply to women. We have no idea, because they only studied men, because only anyone ever cared about was men. And I was like, my mind was just blown, because I have said, how is this possible? You know, I've been learning these theories since undergrad, and they're just accepted. Oh, this is just this theory, and this is the way it works. And this, you know, it's foundational. It's foundational for your understanding of criminology. But it was all based on men. And so if men are the default and women are the deviant, right? We're the others. We're the second. Then our power is necessarily not the same. And to me, I view it as almost a defense mechanism, almost a survival mechanism, to say, in this world where we live, where I have no power, I don't have control over my own body, I don't have control over all of these structures and institutions that control my life. I don't have any power to change that. I don't have any control over it. It all happens to me, right? That's how I see we're trying to sort of push against that in some respects. And this is something I've thought about a lot, because, you know, growing up as a female in the South, yeah, if you want something, you flash your smile, you bat your eyelashes, and you get what you want. But I would gladly trade any of that to have real power, to have more women of color in places of authority, to have a woman of color be our president, to have an African-American woman be on the Supreme Court, right? I would gladly give up all of the powers of our feminine wiles to have real power. And I'll get off my soapbox now.
I like your soapbox. Listen, so Amanda, you said a couple of things. One of them, which is about the research, which is why role congruity theory is so important to our studies, and how it has helped enlighten us on the idea of gender-defined roles and women in leadership, especially. How we're still messed up in those areas with our expectations of women leaders. But the other thing I think that you really hit on is the ideal of privilege. Really, what you're saying is that women may have power, and they may have the power of the P, but when it comes down to it, as James Brown said, this is a man's world, right? Okay, it don't mean much without a woman's touch, but the reality is that we still live in a male driven world, a society where men still have the privilege from being male, just the bottom line. And so we may have the influence, and women may start feeling empowered because of the, they feel like they can express themselves sexually now in an overt sexual way. But the fact that we're even having this conversation is an indication as to how our society is constructed. So I'm going to read this little comment. Then Carrie's going to come on in here and get ready to drive this Q&A. Gwyneth Paltrow, I don't know if you guys saw her on the Kelly Clarkson show the other day, but when she was asked what song does she go to when she is feeling down, She said WAP. Now she said the word. She didn't actually say WAP. She said the words. And so that's where she is finding her power. That's what lifts her up and reminds her of her womanhood. So I am so excited that we have had opportunity to go through these 3 questions. Now, Carrie, come on in. I don't see your face, Carrie. Come on. There you are. Okay.
Yeah, listen. The people are they are appreciating this conversation. There are so many comments. So we want to acknowledge that we see your comments, but what we're going to try to do is lift up the questions first. So there was a question that I actually shared in the group a little while ago, and I want to give you a little bit more clarity. So this discussion about WAP, the question is the explicit mantra of WAP a cultural issue, or is it broader to all women? So maybe you've had an opportunity to think about that question. We've brought up, thank you so much, Amanda, for for bringing in some of the cultural piece as well as the gender piece. This is what Bridge is all about, is the intersection of all those things. So let's get into it. What do you think, ladies? What do you think?
And I want the panelists to talk, so I'm going to be quiet. Amanda has already talked about the intersectionality of race and class and gender. So she's already given my answer. Women, Yolanda, Dorothea, Jerry, Amanda. Dorothea got her mic unmute. Go for it, Dorothea.
I'm muted. And I have to say this. You all have my senses just going all over the place. I mean, I get so excited when I hear people having really great discourse, and it's like, oh, I need a glass of wine and some cheese and some grapes, and I just happy. But this is amazing. I have to say that culture does play a part in it, in that there are different definitions that we can pull from knowing where people historically have been. If you're familiar with slavery, you're familiar with, of course, the atrocities that happened to women, Black women, and Black men on some of they used to have sex farms. Yeah, when I found that out, I thought, oh my God, I didn't understand. They had sex plantations where people could go and have sex with, men, or have sex with Black women, whatever. But that's just what they were for. And there's some things there that really, so when you talk about culture, does it play a role? Well, yeah, of course it does. Out of that, you've got really a whole nother, y'all ding me if I'm saying this wrong, okay? Amanda, you got me. You let me know if I say this incorrectly, because I don't mean to. I think I almost feel like we have a whole nother race of people that have been born out of slavery. And that would be what some people would term octoroon, mulatto, biracial babies. We have that because that's where it came from first. And now we have it as in a more loving, kind of concept. But I think culture plays a big role in sexuality and in sexual empowerment. And it absolutely does. You cannot, you have to look at it from that perspective. And I think that in some way, like with Cardi B, Gwyneth Paltrow, whoever, I would say Cardi B first. She may see herself more powerful from a cultural perspective because of the how she's been demeaned in the past as a woman, as a Black woman, as a woman of color. That gave her more control. And I get it. I do understand where she's coming from. I'm not a fan of her delivery, but I do get it. I do understand. And so, yeah, culturally, I think there's so much that can be said there. I feel like I'm kind of grabbing at everything that is coming to me, but culturally, absolutely. And I wanted to say this last thing real quick, that we have to understand, and y'all, I'm gonna go with God here. We have to understand that when we talk about that charismatic thing, I'm gonna hop back there real quick, and I promise, Rebecca, I'll be short. But we have to understand that the Holy Spirit is a very powerful aphrodisiac. I had an older gentleman who sat next to me on a bus in Chicago. I was taking my little girl to daycare, getting ready to go to school. And he leaned over and said that to me. And I was like, what do you mean? So you talk about that power. There is a particular spiritual power that we have to address and have to acknowledge and
Yes,
understand
yes.
because you were created, and I'll say this is your theist perspective. So y'all can fuss at me later if you want to. I'm good for the chat or the message thing. But we do have to understand that there is a particular power, and oftentimes that is it, especially with all women, that is misperceived because that whole attraction is supposed to be used for good, as I said earlier, and not for evil. And what you put your definitions in that, but that is something that we have control of as women. We absolutely have control of that power that is within us
Yeah.
to express ourselves outwardly. And whether you're coming from a cultural perspective as a Black woman
Mhm.
who is in a white dominated society, and you want to express yourself as a Black woman, it's not necessarily a question of is it sexually or is it intellectually. I think that you have to come from your perspective and all of that, the holistic part of your perspective and all of that. But you got to know who you are. You got to start out
Yeah.
from a positive place
Yeah.
so that you can understand. I didn't. I was raped. I was molested as a child. About 6 years old is when it started. I was raped as an adult by someone I sang on the praise and worship team with at a church I attended. Yeah, it was devastating for me. But if I and I and I'm and I also am I'm the product of homelessness. I can't. My mom died when I was 14. I was trying to survive after that time in my life. I didn't have parents. I didn't have family who came and got me and raised me. I was really raised alone. And so I had a lot of lessons to learn throughout all of that, regarding culture, regarding socioeconomic disadvantages, regarding all of that. And so what I'm grateful for is that I have had people that I could look to so I could make some judgments and some decisions about where I wanted to go
Mhm.
on this journey, Rebecca.
Yeah.
And you happen to be one of those people.
Oh Lord.
But I think no, and I'm not just saying that. I really mean that. And I'll tell you why later. But that's you look for strong character.
Mhm.
When you want to follow somebody, when you want to write your book, when you want to write your screen play, when you want to uh, do something amazing in your life, you want to look to a mentor, right? You typically look for somebody who's been there, done that, and you
Mhm.
try to see how they did it so you can glean from them. That's what I believe is culturally speaking, and in any other way. You look for people who have been there and done that so you can get a good perspective of how you want to move forward.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I'll leave it right there.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
I thank you so much, Dorothea. You brought up a piece that I want us to consider diving in a little bit, because we really have been exploring the aspect of the WAP era. But uh, in sort of thinking about this topic, Rebecca and I were talking about this, the Me Too movement, and you really laid the foundation of it. This idea of particularly white men taking advantage of Black bodies
Mhm.
has happened since the beginning.
Mhm.
Suddenly there were folks who mentioned Me Too, and the woman who actually started the actual movement is a Black woman.
Yeah.
And it was a while before folks made that
Yeah.
connection, because the folks who were really getting airtime, if you were not people of color.
Mhm.
So I just wonder if anybody on the panel wants to sort of talk about this issue of sexual violence, as it relates to us culturally, and this sort of idea. Amanda, you brought up some of these pieces around consent, and certain occupations. For instance, if you're married or if you work as a prostitute, you can't possibly have been actually violated, but you can. Do you think that culture and race plays into how folks understand and respond to accusations of sexual violence?
Carrie, I want to add to your question. I want to add this piece because I want us also, since we're talking about culture, I want us to remember the time when having a big behind and big lips was not acceptable traits, or it wasn't considered by mainstream culture or society attractive. And lo and behold, somebody made a sex tape. Y'all know who I'm talking about, with their boyfriend, and they started bringing out. They displayed their behind and their lip injections and things, and begin to change the idea of what was attractive, but still only for certain hues of women. So I want to add that to whoever decide to respond to the question, because I don't want us to stop. I don't want us to forget about how, going from Dorothea talking about rape and everything from enslaved women, how we weren't considered even human beings, just chattel, and and even now, how Black women or brown women, if we're talking about culture, aren't always thought of as being attractive, and when they are taken advantage of or sexually violated, how sometimes that is not even addressed because they're not believed. So I hope I didn't repaint your question, Carrie.
No, that's good. I'm looking at Jerry Lee to jump in and have some discussion about that. Start us off there.
Okay, all right.
And maybe you could talk a little bit about your background.
So I do believe it is a cultural issue because also growing up Jamaican, everything, almost everything was sexualized. Our dancing, so me being a JW, looking at that showed me, that's what I thought, that's what women were supposed to do. So that was the cultural experience I had, like, okay, so this is how Jamaican women do it. So I come here to America and I'm no longer, or I'm on my way out of the JW, and I see what is expected of a woman, of a Black woman, and what is now, what I'm talking through with my therapist, yes, I'm willing to admit that, was sexual violation. What I experienced instead of what was, I thought was the norm. So I believe it is a cultural issue.
Come on, ladies.
I'm not going any further.
Come on, ladies.
Oh, Yolanda and Amanda.
Yeah, come on, Yolanda.
I believe it's a cultural issue. I think Jerry brings up a good point in that when you just grow up in that, you get used to it and you may never say anything about it. And then when you do come out about it, they won't believe you. So I think it's becoming now that people are responding better to someone saying I was sexually abused or I was molested. They, believe it a little bit better now, but just a little while ago, they weren't as receptive in believing, especially the Black woman. They do, statistics are there to show that they do receive information in that realm from white women, especially if it has something to do with a Black male. Or if the woman didn't see the male, she will blame that it was a Black male. So in that regards, yes, it is a cultural issue. I totally believe it came way back when, slavery time, where the white man seen us only as a sexual tool. And so you get the WAP error that you're using now, this sexual tool, to let, to kind of say, well, this is kind of what I'm seen as anyway. So let me just exploit that and make it what I want it to be. I remember like I was very into white men growing up. Like I was just, and I was having a discussion with my husband, and he like allowed me to see that white men are only attracted to you because that's just what they see, sex. They just see you as sex, even if you may think that it's something deeper. And I was just like, wow, like that could totally be true. Like they don't know me, but they're like, you're beautiful, but they're not looking at me. They're looking at what it was used for back in the day, a sexualized tool that I'm going to get what I want from this Black woman. She's Black, and this is just what happened. We get it from them, and we violate them, and we do whatever we want with them because they don't really matter. So I think it's a cultural issue. Yes.
Amanda.
I agree with everything everyone has said. And again, I'm a white woman. I have privilege and I recognize that. And I 100% think this is a cultural issue. It is very different for me. And I feel like my job now, in the roles that I'm holding in the areas of my life, is to amplify women of color, amplify their voices. And you see the hashtag believe Black women, right? Because we've talked about believability, and I see that not only from a personal level, but also in the legal realm, right? That believability, there's an entire, the area of scholarship on believability, and that is necessarily overlaps with intersectionality, because for me to go into a courtroom and say something as a white woman, I am probably going to be believed, right? But a woman of color who goes into the same courtroom, says the same thing I said, is not as likely to be believed. And that believability, I think, is really important and plays a really important role in how I think we need to try to shift our culture in our not our culture in the sense we've been talking about, our larger societal culture in the US as a whole. We need to shift things. Things are not going well. And that's one of the ways that I see my job as an ally is to amplify others' voices.
Reverend Rebecca, we got comments.
I know we have.
I mean, folks are still hanging on with us.
You read through some of the comments for us, because it's 7:30. I promised these women I would not take up their whole evening. And yet, this conversation, if we're not careful, as Dorothy and Amanda have said, we would talk about this for a whole nother day and longer. So can you read some of the comments?
Yeah, so let me just share a couple of things. Sexual expression is a state of being. That was earlier from Darlene. Tasha Gibson, this really is a good and important conversation. Thank you so much, Rebecca Burrow, and thank you, panelists, for your candor and insight. Janelle Keith Ford shares usually no accountability for men in these areas when we were having that earlier conversation. Leslie Pezzo says, I think for so long we were told to hide away our sexuality, hide our sensuousness, but the power of the P gives us that power in the same way. Another perspective. Darlene also shared, when I was younger, I used the power of the P and my sexy look to get their attention. But when I got older, I realized my power came from my mind. I don't think men use their P as a power source. Men use their brawn first to get your attention, hereby beauty versus brawn. Leslie also says this can tie into slut shaming as well. This
Mhm.
idea that we're talking about, women are still fighting to be allowed to do with their bodies what they wish, including and especially in political policies,
Mhm.
laws, etc. This is where we are fighting for the power of the P and using what we can to gain that power. Men are not slut shamed. I know that makes me so mad. In the
Right.
way women are, they are
Mhm.
considered heroes. You rarely consider men as prostitutes unless they're gay. It's not something we consider, but women are so easily labeled for their sexuality. Now says it's always been said that women rule the world because of their sexuality. Sex is used to sell products by men and women.
Mhm.
He also made the point that Prince wrote a song called P Control.
Mhm.
And so just some other thoughts, about this discussion. Thank you, Leola and Darlene and others who have been listening. And I think, Rebecca, we could tell the people what's up next.
Yes, yes, yes. So, first of all, thank you, Amanda, Jerry Lee, Dorothea, Yolanda, Carrie. Thank you all so much for spending. Actually, we've been talking for 2 hours because we started at 5:30 with our pre-conversation. I appreciate you all so much for sharing your perspectives about this important conversation. And the reality is, we barely cracked the egg, right? I mean, there is still so much to be talked about. Yolanda, you brought up some important points in your last comment, and definitely reminded me of why there was such um, an outlash, I guess, of the conservatives after the Grammys. You know, they were really upset about the Meg and Cardi uh, performing their song. The conservatives really had a lot to say about it. So you all each have made me think of several things. Dorothea, you said that your perception, you said something about perception in your first response and or second response, and it reminded me of, is my perception or is your perception of me my responsibility? Add that to our questions next week as we talk about what is our responsibility and how people see us. Is your perception of me my responsibility? How much of that is your issue, or how much of it is my issue? And so that's something that we can definitely uh talk about, carry a little farther. Jerry Lee, you definitely reminded me that this this thing that we're trying to navigate and explore tonight um, is difficult, because in your question number one, you were quick to say, uh, "Yeah," and and number two, you were, you're kind of like, I'm trying to figure out, how do I, is it the person's responsibility, or is violation, does it clash with overt sexual expression? And in the same breath, in your question, on question number one, you were like, do you believe women's overt sexual expression is a form of sexual empowerment? And so you kind of, you had those balls juggling tonight, you were so
Mhm.
you know um Amanda, I thank you so much for your transparency and honesty and your willingness to share from a perspective of a white woman who realizes her place of power and privilege, and also acknowledging and bringing that into the conversation, because that's definitely an important piece. We all are women, but we come at this thing from different vantage points, different world views, different lived experiences. And so I really appreciate you sharing that, along with your legalese that you was able to put through there. And so, Dorothea, you brought the preach, and I appreciate that. And we got more to talk about off camera. So I appreciate everything you said, and for your transparency and sharing part of your story, because I do know that where you come from and your story is also from a place of healing and being able to be restored in a sense where you can have this conversation and share from a vantage point that maybe some of the other panelists did not have. So I really appreciate that. And you definitely made sure that we were mindful of the historical context of this conversation. I'm talking about from enslaved people to today and what that really means. Caroline, thank you so much for being our technical assistant for tonight and bringing, those questions. Next week, y'all, Miss Caroline and I will finish this conversation, part 2, and we're gonna probably go at it. We're gonna go at it. If you have tuned in for part 1, please make sure you come back next week for part 2. We want to get into some additional aspects of the cultural piece, and we also want to deal with context, looking at this from a historical and position, and how men might be confused by some of our sexual expression now and what it means for them. So Karen, Lo, Leslie, all of you all, and Darlene, thank you all so much for joining us, and all the other folks that have listened to us tonight. Make sure you come back next week for Tuesday Together Talk at 6 p.m. If you have questions that you want to direct at any of the panelists, please make sure you message me and I can, put you in touch with them. Dorothea, you definitely need to connect with her. She is over a nonprofit. Dorothea, we didn't at Project Speak Life, right?
Yes, it is Project Speak Life.
Okay.
And you can catch me at projectspeaklife.org.
Okay. Y'all hear that? projectspeaklife.org. You can catch me at www.reconciliationandequity.com, or you can find us on Facebook at Reconciliation and Equity. Make sure you continue to follow us, like us, bring some of your friends over, and we just want to keep having these conversations. So thank you again, panel. Does anybody else have anything else they want to say tonight? Okay, I can tell who I need to call after this conversation.
Oh, you're amazing, Reverend Rebecca, and I
God
really
bless you
appreciate
all.
the opportunity to be here with you in this setting. This is beautiful. Thank you so much.
Likewise. It's been years since I've talked to and seen Dorothea, but
Yeah.
next time maybe we can get her to hum a little song, sing a little song, because she
I'm
can
going on mute.
sing. And for those of you that attend church where I attend church, she don't sing like me, y'all. She can really sing. So anyway, again, thank you all so much. God bless you. Make sure that you catch us again next week for part 2 at 6 p.m. Tuesday Together Talk at Reconciliation and Equity. Love y'all. See y'all later.